There was a time, not so long ago, though it feels like another era entirely, when flying out of the West Coast had a kind of personality, even charm. It wasn't just transportation. It was part of the journey, an experience that started the moment you stepped onto the tarmac. No endless TSA lines, no shoe removal gymnastics, and definitely no fights over overhead bin space. Instead, you got the raw elements of the California sky, coastal wind tousling your hair, the sting of jet fuel in the air, and the clang of metal stairs leading up to a fuselage painted with a wink and a grin. Flying with a regional West Coast airline in the 1990s felt casual, personable, and in many ways, joyful. There were no cold, anonymous terminals. You were greeted with sunshine, both literal and metaphorical. And if the airline slogan didn't make you smile, "Catch our smile" comes to mind, the flight attendants probably did. You might board with a plastic boarding pass that looked more like a raffle ticket, sit down in a leatherette seat that actually had some cushion to it, and get handed a soda in an actual cup. Occasionally, for a touch of flair, you might even be offered a glass of bubbly. Cheap, yes, but sparkling nonetheless. Pacific Southwest Airlines, PSA, defined this era more than most. Based in San Diego, PSA was pure West Coast charm in the sky, from the grinning noses painted on its planes, to the bubblegum-colored uniforms, and the kind of cheeky in-flight humor that bordered on camp. It was a brand that didn't just sell air travel, it sold sunshine and a wink. Their attempt to muscle into the big leagues with the wide-body Lockheed L-1011 TriStar was a gutsy move, albeit short-lived. It was the kind of move that made passengers root for them, even as the economics didn't quite work out. PSA's eventual merger with US Air in 1987 was more than a corporate acquisition. It was the beginning of the end for a distinctly Californian way to fly. Slowly but surely, the smile on the plane disappeared, and with it, the character of those once cozy flights up and down the coast. AirCal, another quintessentially West Coast airline, was less flashy, but just as beloved. Based in Orange County, it started as Air California and ran routes that seemed designed with the working traveler in mind. Before Silicon Valley was Silicon Valley, AirCal was shuttling business people between emerging tech hubs like San Jose and Southern California. Their service was straightforward but sincere. A hot coffee, a cookie, maybe a warm snack, and always a genuine effort to make flying less stressful. It was practical air travel with a hint of warmth, exactly what Californians had come to expect. But by the late 80s, American Airlines absorbed AirCal and rebranded everything in shades of beige and bureaucracy. Then there was Hughes Airwest, a true standout in the skies, if only for its unapologetically bold style. While most airlines of the era stuck to muted tones and conservative branding, Hughes Airwest leaned hard in the other direction. So hard, in fact, that its planes were nicknamed Flying Bananas. The entire fleet was painted in a shocking banana yellow hue that you could spot from a mile away on any tarmac. Their motto, "Top Banana in the West," wasn't just cheeky wordplay. It was a declaration of intent. This was an airline that wanted to make flying feel fun, a little funky, and unmistakably different. The airline emerged in the late 1960s through a merger of Bonanza Airlines, Pacific Airlines, and West Coast Airlines, and it carried with it the laid-back, sunshine-splashed attitude of the regions it served. With its home base rooted in the West Coast and service that blanketed California, Arizona, and neighboring states, Hughes Airwest gave passengers a splash of SoCal charm even before takeoff. But ambition has a price. The airline tried to grow beyond its western roots and plant its flag in the Midwest, a gamble that stretched its resources and strained its business model. The skies were getting more competitive, especially in the deregulated era, and in 1980, the inevitable happened. Republic Airlines acquired Hughes Airwest, absorbing its roots and fleet, and closing the chapter on one of America's most visually iconic airlines. It was the beginning of the end, not just for Hughes, but for a certain kind of regional charm in the skies. Republic itself would eventually be folded into Northwest Airlines, which in turn would be swallowed by Delta, part of the long domino chain of consolidations that reshaped U.S. air travel. Northwest, for its part, wasn't a household name on the West Coast in quite the same way, but it had stature. Headquartered in Minnesota with a powerful hub in Minneapolis-St. Paul, Northwest Airlines projected itself as serious, stable, and capable of reaching places most U.S. carriers didn't. It flew deep into Asia, forging early partnerships in Japan and expanding to China and the Philippines, at a time when Pacific routes were just becoming prime battlegrounds. Through its airlink program and government-supported essential air service contracts, Northwest connected far-flung Midwestern towns like Bemidji and International Falls with global capitals. Sure, you might have to stop in Detroit or Memphis, back when that was still a hub, but eventually you could get from just about anywhere in the U.S. to a surprising range of international destinations. When Delta acquired Northwest in 2008, it wasn't just a merger, it was a seismic shift that made Atlanta the nerve center of an even larger global airline, swallowing yet another legacy brand into the ever-tightening web of modern aviation. Then there was Western Airlines, a name that still resonates like a surf rock echo for those who flew them during their heyday. Their slogan, "The only way to fly," was both a promise and a vibe, backed by clever marketing that included a cartoon bird reclined on a tail fin, clutching a drink with visible glee. Western specialized in the leisure routes, Hawaii, Mexico, sunny destinations from LAX that came with built-in vacation energy. The airline leaned into comfort and service, offering a free glass of bubbly, even in coach, to set the tone. Flights to places like Phoenix or Salt Lake City were short but sweet, often accompanied by smiles and a sense of occasion. There was a time when boarding a Western flight felt like stepping into a laid-back California commercial. Relaxed, a little glamorous, and proudly West Coast. Then came Reno Air, scrappy, stylish, and unmistakably tied to its namesake city. Launched in the early 1990s, this short-lived carrier operated a modest but reliable fleet, mostly made up of McDonnell Douglas MD-80s with a few MD-90s sprinkled in. Their planes were sleek for the time, often featuring modern interiors and a clean, contemporary livery that gave them the look of a player trying to punch above its weight. Reno Air carved out a niche, flying from secondary hubs like San Jose and Las Vegas, which made it feel closer to the ground in spirit than the giants it competed against. It wasn't just the planes, it was the attitude. People rooted for Reno Air the way you root for a hometown team with grit and heart. The airline's smartest play may have been its partnership with American Airlines. Passengers could earn A-Advantage miles on Reno flights, which instantly gave the airline a bit of prestige. To the average flyer, it meant access to the loyalty perks of a major network, while flying with a smaller, friendlier crew. But like many regional airlines with promise, Reno Air's success painted a target on its tail. In 1999, American Airlines made it official, absorbing Reno Air into its growing empire. The name disappeared, the fleet was repainted, and yet another plucky upstart was folded into the faceless fold of Big Air. And somewhere in the middle of this golden era of West Coast air travel was Shuttle by United, a name that might not ring as loudly today, but was once a key player in the effort to blend big airline reach with regional airline soul. Launched in 1994, Shuttle by United was United Airlines' answer to the low-cost, high-frequency model that carriers like Southwest were mastering up and down the West Coast. It wasn't trying to be glamorous. Instead, Shuttle was practical, efficient, and no-nonsense, focused on short-haul business and leisure routes primarily in California and neighboring states. The idea was to offer a pared-down, quick turnaround version of United that could compete in the fast-paced shuttle market between cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. The aircraft, often Boeing 737s, still bore the familiar United livery, but the onboard experience was intentionally more stripped down. Flight crews were uniformed United employees, but the service was streamlined for speed. Less fuss, faster boarding, quicker takeoffs. Seating was still reasonably comfortable, and the frequency of departures made Shuttle a favorite for travelers who didn't want to be tied down to rigid schedules. You could finish a morning meeting in San Jose and be back in LA for dinner without breaking a sweat. What Shuttle by United lacked in flash, it made up for in functionality. It was a bridge between the full-service legacy carriers and the rising tide of low-cost airlines, an early attempt at hybridizing convenience with network connectivity. And for a few years, it worked, offering passengers the perks of United's loyalty program while maintaining the agility of a smaller operator. But as with many experiments in the post-deregulation era, scale and economics eventually caught up. By 2001, United quietly folded the shuttle operation back into its mainline network. No scandal, no collapse, just a quiet sunset for a service that had done its job. Western Pacific Airlines, based in Colorado Springs, was another plucky little low-cost carrier, affectionately dubbed WestPac, and captured the imagination of travelers across the western United States with its bright airplanes, cheeky advertising, and ambitious dreams. The airline's tale began in 1994, when Ed Bovee, already famous as the founder of America West Airlines, set out to create a new budget-friendly carrier. Initially called Commercial Air, the startup quickly found a deep-pocketed champion in Oklahoma billionaire Edward Gaylord, who requested a name with a bit more flair. Thus, Western Pacific Airlines was born, its name evoking the wide-open skies it hoped to conquer. Choosing Colorado Springs Municipal Airport, COS, as its base, was a masterstroke, or so it seemed. The underused airport offered low operating costs, light competition, and a sparkling new terminal opened in 1994. On April 28, 1995, the airline's first flights took off to Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and Oklahoma City, operated by a modest fleet of 8 second-hand Boeing 737-300s. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like the Rocky Mountains had a new hometown airline hero. Westpac's most memorable innovation was its Air Logo program, turning its planes into flying billboards. If you were lucky enough to spot a bright yellow 737 streaking across the desert sky, you might have seen the Simpsons jet, a $1 million marketing stunt dreamed up with Fox Television to boost the cartoon family's Nielsen ratings. Other aircraft proudly bore logos for ski resorts, car rental companies, and Las Vegas casinos. And for planes without a corporate sponsor, Westpac gave them whimsical names like Winter Wonder Plane and Super Summer Saver Jet. But behind the painted planes and playful branding, storm clouds gathered. The airline bled $90 million in its first 3 years, and leadership turnover became frequent as investors lost patience. In 1997, management bet big by moving its operations to Denver International Airport, hoping for a larger market and a shot at courting business travelers. Gone were the logo jets. In came a more serious look and pared-down route network. Unfortunately, Denver's major airlines were quick to defend their turf, slashing fares and undercutting Westpac at every turn. A proposed merger with fellow Denver upstart Frontier Airlines fizzled amid cultural differences, leaving Westpac to fend for itself. By late 1997, the airline was in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, with CEO Robert Pizer optimistically predicting an imminent turnaround. It never came. On February 4, 1998, Western Pacific Airlines quietly ceased operations, leaving behind a legacy as one of the most colorful and ambitious low-cost carriers of the 1990s. Finally, there was America West, based in Phoenix and built to serve the vast, sun-drenched territory of the American Southwest. This airline was bold from day one. They leaned into their identity with vibrant liveries and a youthful, confident tone in their marketing. America West didn't try to look like an East Coast legacy airline. They embraced the open skies and open roads of the West, connecting smaller cities with major coastal destinations and making a name for themselves as the airline of choice for desert dwellers and budget-savvy adventurers alike. As the 2000s approached, America West wasn't done yet. They grew, merged, and eventually pulled off one of the biggest pivots in airline history, absorbing U.S. Airways in 2005 in a reversal that surprised many. It was America West, not U.S. Airways, that called the shots in the new version of the brand. But that win was short-lived in historical terms. A decade later, the whole operation was swallowed by American Airlines, completing the transformation from nimble regional upstart to a cog in the largest airline machine in the world. Today, Reno Air and America West exist only in pieces. You might spot an old logo in a forgotten terminal, or stumble across a dusty safety card in a collector's forum. Some YouTube channels keep their spirit alive with flight sim recreations or retro commercials, and a few aviation museums still honor them with models and uniforms on display. But what lingers most isn't just the branding or the routes. It's the atmosphere, the vibe of another era in air travel. These airlines made flying feel special, even personal. They catered to communities that felt overlooked and gave travelers a sense that they were part of something smaller, friendlier, and a little more human. It's that feeling we miss most. Not just boarding a plane, but walking across a sunlit tarmac, ticket in hand, engines humming nearby, the smell of jet fuel, the heat of the concrete, the crew waving you aboard. The journey didn't start in the air. It started the moment you looked out over the horizon and knew you were going somewhere. Flying with an airline that actually felt like it belonged to you.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 19.x we're here just for you, for you.